wanted to give a quick post note after our celebration about the shutdown being averted. I'm noticing a lot of Democrats who are sort of, oh, but we didn't get this and we didn't get that. And I understand that because some of the Ukraine funding was essential. But what you have to understand is that we couldn't allow our government to be hijacked by the Republicans. You understand the way that the government functions is that there's a two-party system. Republicans are trying to hold up funding for everything for this one particular thing. So what Democrats have done, and it's brilliant, is they have agreed to short-term funding as sort of, I guess, almost like a stopgap until they can get further funding down the road. And this was a reasonable compromise because this particular thing will pass the Senate and the House, and Ukraine will get aid. Will they get as much aid as they were needing? No, but they are still going to get aid, and they will continue to get aid. The problem is, I think what angers me sometimes with this kind of stuff is that Democrats fight very hard to ensure that certain things continue to function in spite of Republican obstructionism, and they still get blamed for what Republicans are doing. Realize that if you want to get mad at anybody, get mad at the Republicans, not the Democrats. Every Democrat would vote for it. Every Republican, as it stands, would not. And that's because some of them, not all of them, but many of them are in Putin's pocket. We know this to be the case because they tend to jump up and down about that man like he, Brad Pitt in a, shirtless, topless Brad Pitt in the 90s, because, that was pretty nice. But anyway, I digress. It is a matter, I'm going to share my screen here and show you guys a little something. And so if you look at Bill Palmer, he talks about how Senate Democrats are moving to keep Ukraine funding intact after budget agreement. He goes on to say here that Senate Democrats are already preparing a supplemental funding measure for Ukraine as early as next week, according to Bloomberg News. This appears to be enough votes in both Senate and House to pass it. Now, if you go to the actual Bloomberg article, what I noticed is they put a negative slant on it. Oh, they didn't get everything. I'm like, goodness, this is why people both sides everything. You have Senate Democrats and House Democrats fighting very hard to get everything for everyone. You got obstructionists on the other side kneecapping the effort, and somehow Democrats still get all the blame. How is that fair? But I digress. But at the end of the day, our government was still funded. People who needed government assistance, they were able to keep their government assistance. People in our military are still, there were essential functions that were going to get shut down. Blame Republicans. Blame Republicans. They were the ones causing this mess. And we did what we needed to keep functioning. And Ukraine will still get funded. And some of that funding will come in as little as the next few weeks. So keep positive. And so this leads into the main crux of what I wanted to say here. I wanted to talk about why I don't like Republicans and why I don't like giving them any sort of measure, even when they do good things. There's a tendency. Now, I'm not going to say this is of all Republicans, and there are some who still have that what I call Mr. Rogers kind of mentality. Mr. Rogers was a Republican, but he was an advocate, and he was out there fighting a good fight. And he was a good person, but you don't see a lot of the Mr. Rogers Republicans nowadays, and they're few and far between. I am pleasantly surprised by Judge McAfee in Fulton County. He is a Federalist, but we also have to remember it was a Federalist. There's some Federalists who are actually going with the 14th Amendment, the clause, I can't remember, it's the number 3 clause, that basically states that, let me look that up real fast. There's the 14th Amendment, Section 3, that's what it was, Section 3. And there are people in the let me look at Federalist Got how I'm doing this real time, guys. Federalist. All right. So there are people, even in the Federal Society, who are going after Trump and trying to use the 14th Amendment Section 3 clause to have him tossed off the ballot because he was part of a rebellion and could be claimed to be an insurrectionist. Now, there's legal scholars on both sides arguing for and against, but so there are these Federalists that are supposedly strict constitutionalists, and McAfee is one. So I would say that while he is not a Democrat, he's probably not a fan of Trump, but I still see a guy who seems to be fair, unlike Judge Cannon in Florida, who we can apparently see is, basically Team Trump. This guy seems to be leaving. I can't even tell when I see this guy where his allegiances do lie, really, because he seems to be a fair and impartial judge. So I can greatly appreciate that. I do believe that we will get a good ruling from Judge McAfee. But aside from that, and that small percentage of Republicans, and I can say I respect, I will say this. There's far too many of them who seem to be okay with racial violence. There's far too many of them that seems to be okay with misogyny. There's far too many of them who seems to be okay with rape, the rape of children, the grooming of children. As much as they scream about drag queens grooming children, they don't. Or even as much as they scream about trans people grooming children, and they don't. And here's the thing. You're more likely in your lifetime to hear about someone in a church harming a child than you will ever hear about a trans person or a drag person harming a child. And I can tell you that with 110% certainty right now. If it was truly about helping children, they would be also trying to ferret that stuff out in churches. But what I see happening with me on the right is they'll circle the wagons, even when it's a guy that they know have hurt children. They circle the wagons, even when they know there's a young girl who's been raped and harmed. They force her to have a child she can't afford, and they'll do nothing to help that child. I cannot get behind that kind of thing. I'm going to pull up two things that really was the impetus for me writing about this. All right, so I'm going to go share my screen again. Okay, let me close that. So there's a fundraiser for a young man named Carlos Martinez. And it's a fundraiser by Carlos Martinez to help Jacob Johns recover from a terrorist attack. I'm going to read about this attack first. So basically, there was a guy in a MAGA hat who showed up at a protest where Indigenous people were protesting the raising of a statue of a conquistador who went in and he did awful things. And one of the biggest things that stood out to me was he cut off one of the feet, I think it was the left or right foot of Indigenous Native American men of a certain age when he took over. This guy, so yeah, do I blame them? Why do people want to raise statues for awful human beings? Shouldn't we be raising them for people who founded foundations that help feed the hungry or the poor, or who actually started educational programs, or nurses who came and fought in the war? No, why do we want to raise and erect statues to human beings who harmed groups? Again, Republicans seem to be all okay with genocide. I'm just saying they don't seem to be against it. Anyway, let's go further. So the suspected shooter, 23-year-old Ryan Martinez, was arrested by Espanola and Pueblo police and faced charges of attempted murder and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Because what this man did was he tried to fire on, I think it was a group of children, and this man stepped in the fray and he got shot in the chest. I only learned of this on Daily Cost when one of his friends posted a GoFundMe, and I'm going to show you the GoFundMe, and then I want you guys, I'm going to put in the description, please give to this man because this is horrific. And what I don't like is that when you hear things, we live in an era where I would not be surprised that Republicans rally for this man. Free speech or some, who knows what they're going to say, but they would rally for this man. And if I were to say, hey, show us that you're not for this kind of thing. Well, why should I have to prove that I don't? Because your party seems to be supporting this kind of thing. Let's go back to Trump saying, there were some good people who were white supremacists supporting, protesting the removal of a particular statue. So that's what I'm saying. Show us that you're against this. Where are the majority Republicans saying that this was wrong? All right, so Indigenous climate activist, artist, musician, and father Jacob Jones was shot in the chest this morning during a Na Juan de Onote statue peaceful protest in Tiwa territory, more commonly known as Espanola, New Mexico. Jacob put his body between women and children when the shooter charged towards the altar. He was airlifted to a hospital in Albuquerque. And I'm trying not to cry here. Because the thing that angers me, that man in a red MAGA hat pointed his gun at children because they didn't want a statue erected of a man who harmed their community. And where the hell are the Republicans? You wonder why I hate Republicans, and I do. I hate Republicans, modern day Republicans, with a freaking passion. I know I should not have hate in my heart, but I do, because they support this kind of thing. Their leaders support this kind of thing. They never speak out against it. They make people like me. When Black Lives Matter, there was but again, here is the, please donate. Please donate. I'm going to put a link in the description for this man. Okay. But what I'm going to say here is, when Black Lives Matter has any type of a protest, I remember there were Black Lives Matter participants who were screaming about killing the police. I remember there was one supporter who actually did shoot at and kill police. And what happened? Oh, the right screaming about how somebody needs to speak out against it. And you know what? The leader of Black Lives Matter came out and said, we do not support this. When 9/11 occurred, people were screaming at the Muslim American community to come out and say, we do not support this, and they did. Yet when I say to white Republicans, hey, do you support, why do I need to speak out against it? Because you know what? Why do you demand it of us? And I know why. It is to settle the fears that this is a thing that's going to become a problem. But like I said, the reason I won't say anything is that maybe in their heart of hearts, is what they want. They want racial violence. They want people to be hurt and shot and killed in the name of their ethno-state, because many of them believe they're superior. So they don't care about brown people. They don't care about women. They don't even care about little girls. They're going to force a 13-year-old girl to have a child she can't afford and not help her. Don't tell me that you care about children. Our children are getting shot in schools, but you won't enact. I mean, my husband owns guns, but I do believe there's a line in the sand to be drawn about owning guns and responsible gun ownership, because guns are tools of destruction. They are used to take life. Something deadly should be regulated. I'm sorry. So I'm just saying, the thing that aggravates me is this kind of thing. They use sarcastic terrorism. They use violence to get their way. Judge Chuckins is getting death threats. Fonnie Willis was getting death threats. Jack Smith is getting death threats. Let it play out in court if you think this is a witch hunt. But I think they understand it's not the case, and that's why they send threats. When you're going to lose, to me, the using violence is the last refuge of a scoundrel. And what I mean by that is when you know you don't have any right to what you're doing, you will just bully your way through. And that's what they do. They want a world that they will never exist in, and that's one devoid of any other group, you know? So, yes, please give to that poor man who risked his life for those children, who were exercising their American right to protest. I'm sick of this stuff. Do not ask me ever to say a kind thing about a Republican until I see them standing up against this kind of stuff. Until such time, they're always going to be scoundrels. And that's where I stand. Anyway, love you guys and talk soon.